There's such a focus on the numbers. Will I be able to retire? How much money do I need to be retired? And there's this whole idea and construct that you work 30, 40, 50 years, and then all of a sudden you get to enjoy life. I don't get that. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's why I'm awesome every day, because I want to experience joy every day.
Coming up next, Lawrence Sprung is an advisor who founded Midland Financial in 2004. His podcast, the Midland Money Mindset podcast, I've been on. I really enjoyed that as part of my book tour last year. He's a financial planner with a definite point of view, OG, which is what we're about to hear is definite point of view. But I think that if we think more like Lawrence, I think we may do a better job in setting our plans in motion. And I'm super happy we finally have him in Mom's basement. Larry Sprung is here. How are you, man?
I am awesome. Thanks for having me, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here.
That is I would have guessed that's a frequent answer for you, that you're awesome.
Oh, listen, if you're not, then I shouldn't be here this morning. It's a good day. It's a good day, and it always is.
But you're awesome to the point that you've had T-shirts printed where you ask the question. Tell everybody about your T-shirts.
Yeah, so our T-shirts say, "What did you do today that brought you joy?" And we've gotten some interesting answers over the years.
You had a woman just come up to you. I think, based on what I read, it sounded like you didn't even realize you were wearing the T-shirt. She just came up to you and said, "Hershey's Kisses."
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that because, I was online at a ride at Walt Disney World, and a woman just blurts out, "Hershey Kisses." And I'm like, well, I look at my wife. I'm like, what the heck is she talking about? Hershey Kisses.
This woman's crazy.
I'm like, what?
Hershey's Kisses like, back to you, but I'm married. Right?
Yeah. I was like, what? So my wife goes, "Look at your shirt, dummy." I'm like, oh, I forgot. I totally forgot I was wearing it. But I've gotten eyeballs. It got to the point where people were taking so many pictures of the shirt that I put a QR code on the back so people could link into our podcast because I was saying when they were taking pictures, "Hey, we have a podcast. Oh, how do I get to it? Oh, look up Midland Money Mindset." Now they just have to, scan the QR code on the back, which makes it a heck of a lot easier.
I wanted to start there with that story because you begin your whole book with this whole discourse on joy, which surprised me. But why is joy, and why is this important enough to you that you made T-shirts about it?
Yeah, because I think people forget when they're working with a financial advisor. I'm in the wealth management profession, right? And I think that people forget, both advisors and the families forget why they're doing all this planning. There's such a focus on the numbers. Will I be able to retire? How much money do I need to be retired? And there's this whole idea and construct that you work 30, 40, 50 years, and then all of a sudden you get to enjoy life. I don't get that. It doesn't make sense to me, and that's why I'm awesome every day, because I want to experience joy every day. So that is really the premise, and that's really what the underlying reason of what we're looking to help families with is. We are helping them to reach for their goals, reach for whatever they're looking to accomplish in life, and achieve as much joy along the way as they possibly can, because that's what it's all about. So they shouldn't have to wait 30, 40, 50 years for that joy where they stop working. They should do it all along, and that's what we help them try to do.
I feel like, too, as I was reading through this project, that if you do that 30, 40, 50-year plan anyway, you've set these horrible, you're not going to change. You're not going to all of a sudden go from being this miser that does nothing to being somebody that all of a sudden experiences joy. Like, you kind of set your life up in a bad way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other problem is, people are so focused on work, that even if they believe that they should work that period of time and then all of a sudden stop working and retiring, it's very difficult for them to really achieve any level of joy. We see people going back to work in their 50s, 60s, 70s all the time. And contrary to what the general media leads people to believe, which is they need the money and they need the income, I think, and believe me, there are people that applies to, for sure. But there are also a lot of people that aren't finding joy in being retired, so they need to have some kind of meaning in their life.
Yeah. You break down retirement planning, and I know a lot of our Stacker community is excited to look at things through your eyes for a day to kind of get across the table to the financial planner side. You break down retirement planning into two parts. Can you go over what these, just generally speaking, what these two big ideas are when it comes to retirement planning?
Yeah, so one part is actually the money, the numbers, right? What do I need financially to be able to retire, which is important. It's really a part component to that. And I think my definition of retirement isn't necessarily working all those years and then stopping. It's really to create an avenue by which you can replace the income stream that you're getting working, whether it's earlier on or later, and trying to figure out that numerical. And then the other component is the mental and social impacts of retirement. How do you prepare for mentally and socially retiring and slowing down? You know, Joe, you probably experience the same thing I do. You're out and about, you meet somebody. Oh, hey, who are you? What do you do? And their first answer is, oh, well, I'm the CEO of such and such a company, or I'm an attorney at such and such, or I'm a CPA.
It defines our life. Yeah.
Right. And that mental and social component is very, very difficult to turn that off on a dime and go into retirement. So you have to look at both the money, and you also have to look at the mental and social impacts of what it means to start slowing down or actually retire. So
you write early on that people really get intimidated by financial planning. You say the words retirement planning. There's already people that have heard you say retirement planning now, and they're like, this is so big. It's so intimidating. This is a huge part of our life that it just completely, you say that really kind of destroys our confidence when we look at retirement planning that way.
Especially the younger you are, right? It's almost infeasible for people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s to even think about retiring. And it's such a big thing because it brings out a lot of different emotions, right? You say the words retirement planning and immediately dollars start floating through your mind. What am I going to do with the time? There's so many emotions that flood over us that it's like, okay, you know what? I'll save this for another day. Let me go play golf.
Yeah, right.
Let me go play with my kids. Let me go do something else. I'll worry about this later on. And it's intimidating.
You have some statistics, though. 91% of people who do a holistic financial plan say it was useful. 33% say it was critical. Charles Schwab. Another stat that you talk about is people are a lot less stressed out about their life, which is interesting. I actually read, you'll like this, Larry. I read a quote by Eckhart Tolle. Is it Tolle or Tolle? I never know.
I think it's Tolle.
Yeah, I think it might be. I don't know. That E on the end gets me. but Eckhart Tolle says that stress is where the future becomes so important to us that we forget about the present. And basically saying that if we focus more on the present and we can be more in the present, the stress kind of goes away. It seems like what you're saying is the same thing here. A financial plan helps make that stress go away.
Right on. And yeah, I agree with that. And I agree with what they said. And yes, that's exactly what it's all about. Because the thing is, it's not as easy. You know, it's not like planning a vacation where you have a definitive place you're going to, you have a definitive time frame that you're going to be there, and you could fill up all that time with exactly what you know you want to do and how you're going to get joy. Retirement planning is something that is going to evolve over time. And I think people going into it think they have to have all the answers right out of the gate, and they don't. All they need to do is start creating that framework so as life and life events change, they can basically amend and update that plan to where they are in life. So it is a true representation of where they currently are, and they don't have to focus on where they're going to be 20, 30 years down the road. They can focus in the present and make sure what they're doing is going to benefit them in the long term as well.
Well, and the present then brings them more joy. Back to your joy idea.
100%.
You know, I love this topic, and I was going to bring this up later, but let's do this now. We interviewed recently Joanne Littman, the former editor-in-chief of USA Today, and she's got this project she's worked on called Next, where she's talking about going from one phase of life to another. Almost the same discussion we're having now. Mm-hmm. And she said, all the research suggests, Larry, exactly what you're saying, which is you don't have to have it all figured out. And in fact, sometimes just kind of stumbling along, but knowing a little bit about that you are stumbling purposefully makes a lot of sense. But I want to dig into that. When you have somebody come into your office or you're talking to somebody and they're like, listen, I don't really know what my goals are. And you just said that you don't have to know all your goals, but how do you plan when you don't know what the end goals are going to be? How do you solve for ambiguity?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. And I think you just have to, and how we handle it is we start asking more open-ended questions, because typically there are some goals. They just may not be top of mind. They may think that they're so far-reaching or unattainable that they're embarrassed to talk about it or think that it's not even an option. So we ask some more open-ended questions to get a framework of ultimately what are they expecting? What do they want their life to look like? What are their plans for the future? And, again, it may be nothing, it may be a lot, or it may be somewhere in between. And we start planning for that. And, we start looking for the future, because by having control, or at least a little bit of control about it today, is going to give us some more confidence, give us more joy. And they may walk away in that moment saying, you know what, I don't really think I have anything. And then if they start putting some thought and effort into it, they may start coming up with some things that they never realized or in that moment didn't think about.
Do you fill in those holes then with like current thoughts? Like, as an example, if I'm in my 30s, I'm living a lifestyle, I'm not really sure what I want to do 30 years from now because I love my job. Let's say I want to retire when I'm 60, 65 years old. So I set that up as a plan. Do you then just solve for the lifestyle I live today? And can I do it on my same lifestyle? Like, how do I fill in these ambiguity gaps that are going to be there?
Yeah, so I mean, some people, we leave that up to the family in that case, and we'll say, hey, do you want us to solve based upon what we know today, or are there certain things that in the future you're going to need to solve for? If you're fairly confident, hey, I want to have a family, I want to have kids, I'm going to have to pay for college education. We start filling those in, because worst case, right, we solve for a much larger number and it's not needed. But it's a little bit more difficult if you have no goals and you just solve for today and today alone, because it's going to be easier to reach those goals. So if not, we'll actually give them a little bit of homework and say, hey, listen, think about maybe one or two top things that you can think about that are important to you that you would want to see have happen over the foreseeable future. Maybe a rental property, maybe some other type of investment. Maybe you want a boat or a vacation, something along those lines, to get them thinking in that direction.
The best 2 days of a boat owner's life, Larry.
Yes, the day they buy it and the day. And that's the exact reason why I don't own a boat, and I'm a member of Freedom Boat Club, the best monthly membership I have ever paid. It's great. I take the boat out, I bring it back, I hand them the keys, and they charge me for the gas. It's fantastic.
That's what you could even get rid of that if you just made friends with somebody who owns a boat. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
There you go.
True. But then I got to rely on them going out. They might ask me to clean it. I don't know. I don't want to do that.
Hard pass.
Right. We'll go out on my boat on Freedom, and then they don't have to worry about any of that.
Well, I hope that everybody hears you doubling down on hey, if you do have ambiguity, think more about your why, but full well knowing that may change, right? I mean, you're still going to build flexibility into your plan. This is so important to you for a couple reasons. You write that you lost your mom to cancer. How old were you, and how did that affect you?
So my mom was diagnosed in her 30s. I was in my 12, 13 years old or so, maybe 11. And she passed away at the age of 47 and died the day after my 23rd birthday. And it affected me deeply. We were very close, for the last basically 4 months of her life. I was actually not working at that point in time. I chose to take a step back from, working and in my career, and I spent a lot of time with her. So, that has affected me deeply in seeing how short life is, and, has really imparted upon me a lot of the concepts in the book. And, I know a lot of people think about that and maybe they haven't experienced it, but, I wanted to impart upon them that life is short and it is precious. And I experienced it myself, and I think others should get more joy along the way as a result, too, because you never know.
You say that you saw in your dad the effects of really not having a well thought out plan.
Yeah, so my dad didn't have a financial advisor, and he had a lot of balls that he was juggling. He was taking care of the family, my sister and I. He had a full-time job as a New York City school teacher. He also taught night school at times, and then in addition to all that, had his own side business, which predated the side hustle. So he was balancing all these, and I talk about the fact that having an advisor would not have mitigated any of the issues my mom had, her illness, her care. But I feel like, it would have been beneficial to him to have either had a game plan or had somebody to bounce ideas off of as things had changed, right? He was very much more reactive because he didn't have a plan in place than being proactive. And that has really resonated with me. And, in my career, I take a lot of pride in helping families that we've worked with in planning for these events in the hopes that they never happen, some of the bad things, but there are also a lot of good things, right? Helping plan for a new home purchase, a baby coming, a marriage, things like that as well. So it really is a lot of meaningful work, and I think he would have benefited from somebody like us and what we do today.
This is how much you think about this. The name of your firm, actually, which, by the way, I wondered that when I first met you about where the heck the name Mitlin comes from. Like what is Larry like the spokesperson for this bigger firm called Mitlin Money Mindset? And Mr. Mitlin's like, no, you, Larry, no, you got to be on the show. You got to be on the podcast. You're like, okay, Mr. Mitlin, but that's not what Mitlin's all about. What's Mitlin about?
No, so I've gotten calls. There actually is, Mitlin is a family name somewhere, because I've gotten calls from family members thinking I might be a member of their family, which I'm not.
But you're
I'm
happy
not a
to
Mitlin.
be. It might give you joy.
Well, maybe. I might have to do a little more research on that. But yeah, so, the MIT was my wife's grandfather, Mitchell. And he was a New York City police officer, veteran, just a really nice guy. He was the kind of guy that would buy ice cream for the entire block when the ice cream truck came down the road. And it wasn't because he was wealthy. It was just that he got a lot of joy out of doing that. And my mom's name was Linda, Lin, and she was just a super courageous, down-to-earth, just no quit and full transparent person that everybody was really attracted to in terms of her personality. And when we were thinking about forming the firm, we thought it would be no better to use these two people's names to bring it together. The interesting thing is, on top of that, my wife and I met about 3 or 4 months after these two people passed away. We met. We started reconciling where we were and why we were where we were. And as it turned out, Mitchell and Linda passed away literally within hours of each other the same day. So when we were thinking about the firm name, we were like, hey, these people really embody what we want to be about. And what better way to honor these two individuals and have core values associated with the firm than using their names in the firm name and naming it Mitlin.
You take this idea then of a why, and obviously then, as we've been talking about, you marry it to your financial plan, to a holistic financial plan. First of all, can we talk about the difference between holistic, like the importance of the word holistic when you talk about financial planning? Because I think some people don't know what the hell that is. Like when I'm in these online groups sometimes, Larry, people are like, why do I need a financial advisor? I can pick an index fund. I'm like, I think you're missing out on really what an advisor does. What is a holistic mean? So
first of all, I think holistic is overused, and there are a lot of people who use it that really are using it as a tool to attract families to work with them, and they don't really do holistic
where you
financial
can get
planning.
you get like the whole annuity and all the insurance.
There you go. Exactly. So what it really should be is having somebody who's actually devising a plan, giving you a full picture of where you are today, where you want to be, and creating a glide path to get there and a way to adjust along the way. And investments happen to be one part of that. Other areas of that are insurance. Are you properly covered if you lose the ability to work or one of the spouses dies? Also looking at property and casualty insurance, which a lot of times gets overlooked. You've built up all these assets. Do you have the right protections in place to protect them from creditors and predators and lawsuits, et cetera? Really looking at the full holistic picture. And that's something that we get a lot of When people come to us, they think we're an investment firm. We're investment managers. And the way I explain it is we are financial planners. We want to have a plan together for you that we can grow and develop and refine over time. And the investments are one component of that. So, my advice to your listeners, if somebody says they're a holistic planner, number one, ask that person what that means. If they say, oh, well, we can asset allocate your assets and we rebalance, then that's probably not holistic planning. If they say it and they describe it as the way I just described it, they may still not be, and they may be. The answer to your question will come after you start working with them. Are they concentrating on other things than just the investments? If they aren't, then probably not holistic, where we concentrate on everything: taxes, P&C, life, all areas that touch our families' lives.
Well, you're truly starting with that why, I think, versus starting with the product, right? You're starting with that why, and then that drives the whole plan.
Otherwise, there is no plan to really plan out. If you have no why, if there's no reason for you to be or do or what you want to accomplish, then how do you even develop a plan for that?
This idea of planning, by the way, this is not I'm retiring Friday, so I should plan today kind of thing. The earlier you plan, the further away the goal is, the easier it's going to be. And I want to give people an example from your book, which is you started saving for college before you had kids?
I did. Yes, I did. So I opened up my first 529 plan account in about 1998, 99, that area. And my first son was born in 2003.
So what if you didn't have kids? What if that just never happened?
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't have kids and it never happened, I would have probably used some of those funds for myself at some point along the way. I've gone through educational components that I could have used those funds for. Maybe my wife would have been able to do it, or I could have potentially used it for a niece or a nephew down the road. There were benefits to starting early. There were some tax benefits here in New York that I wanted to also utilize as contributing. So it seemed like a win-win. And at the time, I was together with my wife, so it really was looking like we were going to, we had talked about and planning to have kids. We just weren't there yet. And it just seemed like a great idea. And we've benefited from starting that early and compound interest for sure.
Well, can you talk about how much? In your book, it says like 70% of what you're going to send your kids to school with is interest. Like the market did the work for you.
Yeah, basically, you're absolutely right, Joe. So we're actually using money from the 529 plans now for my older son who's in college, and 70 cents on every dollar that we're withdrawing out of the 529 plan is interest, and only 30 cents on every dollar is money that my wife and I have actually contributed to the plan. That's pretty powerful. And, I think a lot of folks think about college savings. They don't end up doing anything. They wait, and their college savings plan is my son or daughter's either going to get a scholarship or we're going to get loans. And that's not a great way to go into that type of scenario. Now, I'm not saying you have to start as early as I did and start saving before you have kids, but it would make a whole lot of sense that the minute your first child is born, set that plan up and get it working for you so you have that 18-year period to benefit from.
Exponentially easier. You're not a big believer in rules of thumb, which I wanted to high five your work when I saw that, because I don't like it either. But you do have some tricks. Let's talk about one of the tricks you have in the book. Obviously, you're going to set your 401k percentage when you save for retirement based on that goal. But you have this trick early in the book that says, at the very least, just contribute a little number. Can we talk about how you kind of get to trick yourself into paying yourself first when you don't think you can?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is this. Number one is with your 401k in particular, if there is a match, whatever that match amount is, you should at least be putting that amount in. So if they're matching your first 3, 4, 5%, you should absolutely be putting that amount in, because you're basically leaving money, free money, on the table if you don't do that. Wherever you start, whatever the amount is at that matching level or even below, what I always suggest is you start ticking that up. Now, every plan has different rules. Some will allow you to raise your deferral percentage every paycheck, some monthly, some quarterly, some annually, so keep that in mind. But the whole idea is start with a number that you know in your sleep you can make a contribution to. And then the next time you have a chance to update it, raise it up 1%. And see how that affects your take-home pay. In many cases, if you're contributing to a traditional 401k where you're getting a tax deduction for it, you're not going to see a whole lot of change on a 1% increase. And if you keep doing that until you get to a point where, hey, oh man, I surrender, I can't put in any more money. If you do that and then keep it at that point, you're going to put yourself in a much better position. And the earlier you do that and utilize compound interest, it's more beneficial for you to front end load that in your 20s when you don't think you have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of income, but you also don't have a lot of expenses and responsibility. So if you could put a lot of money in there and keep ticking it up until you get to that point, ideally you want to try to, shoot for paying yourself first 10% of your take-home pay.
Guys, this is such an effective trick. It is so effective versus what most people do, which is I'm going to put a little less than I think I can do just in case, right? Well, our brains are so lazy that if we leave money in reserve, we'll always spend it. Like we'll always spend that money we leave in reserve. Whenever I'd have meetings with clients, I would always challenge them to see if we can save a little bit more money. And they go, what if I can't? And to your point, Larry, I'd say, well, then either you call me or you just back down the 401k and just let me know, do whatever you got to do, but we can just back it down. We can even start off saving it into an account that you think you can get it back, But you know how many times I got a call from somebody saying that they couldn't actually save that money that I dared them to save? Never. Right. I mean, 16 years, it never happened. And we do it, we do 6-7 times a week. I dare people to save a little bit more money. It is such a great trick. You don't like commingling money that's for different goals. You like those to have separate accounts. How come?
Yeah, I think it becomes, very muddy, right? If you have, the account that you're keeping your normal everyday cash flow and bills that you're paying out of, you have an emergency fund, you have a vacation fund, maybe retirement assets, whatever those goals are. If you have it all in one account, it seems as if you have all this money, right? You have all this money available and it's hard to discern what's what. So rather than doing that, play a little mental trick, set up a separate savings account and name it emergency fund. Set up a separate savings account, name it vacation fund. And really what happens is when your money goes into that main checking account that you get your direct deposit in, dole out the amount of money that you're going to put into your emergency fund, into your vacation fund, or whatever other goals you have, and simply leave in that main checking account the amount that you need to pay your monthly bills. This way, if something comes up, you're not dipping in thinking, oh, well, I got all this money in my checking account, I can afford it. Well, you know what? You're not really taking into account those emergency fund money and your vacation money. Then what? So it's just a little mental trick, and it seems to work really well for people because it actually puts a reason behind it and then also eliminates that money from seeming available for everyday expenses.
Let's talk about emergency fund for a second. What do you say to those people online who will tell you, Larry, you've seen what inflation's been. Why am I going to set a bunch of money in a savings account earning less than inflation versus having 100% of my money invested? Why would I? It seems suboptimal. I've heard that a lot online.
Yeah, listen, sometimes, there's pros and cons to everything, right? And the con you're paying in terms of keeping that money in the emergency fund is, yes, you're not getting as great a return on the investment. Maybe you're battling against inflation there, but you're also gaining that immediate liquidity that is available. There are plenty of online banks even today that are paying decent returns. I use one in particular. I think they just ticked up to around 4%. Depending on where you believe inflation is today, that's better than 0% for sure. But really the benefit is that I have that money available in case of an emergency. If you have it in the market and you have it in a true emergency, you still have access to that money. You may be growing it better over a long period of time, but if you need to tap into it at the wrong period of time, you could have less money than you need or wanted to tap into because of the decline in those assets. So I believe that having the liquidity and having that money readily available offsets the reasoning behind investing it and having that money in the market per se.
I want to ask you, you go into budgets. We went through a long period where we didn't talk about budgets at all in the show, and we've been hammering budgets lately, so I'm not going to dive too deep into this. But what makes an effective budget for you?
So for me, it's just understanding how much money's coming in and how much money's coming out, and understanding where that money is coming from on the way in and where it's going on the way out. I talk about in the book that we don't get involved in really creating those budgets for folks, because one of the things that I find is when you start talking as an advisor to a family about budget, they're fearful because a lot of advisors spend shame their families, meaning, they start going through their expenses with a fine-tooth comb. You should get rid of this. You should get rid of that. And you know what? What I may think is a frivolous expense may bring that family a whole lot of joy. So who am I to say, get rid of that expense? So it's really a self-reflection and just a real self-understanding and awareness of what's happening with your money on a regular basis.
But what I love about your answer there is that what everybody should do is, this is what I got out of it, Larry, is that you should Marie Kondo your budget. Like go line by line and say, how much joy does this give me? And if it doesn't give me joy, then that's the factor that makes you get rid of it.
Agreed. Yeah. I reference Starbucks. People say to me, oh, you spend, $3-4, whatever number of weeks. If you put that money in a Roth IRA over 15 years, you could have an extra $17,000 by the time you retire. But you know what? I got a Starbucks yesterday. I really enjoyed it. I wanted it. I enjoyed it. I got a lot of joy out of it. And as long as I can afford it and it doesn't affect my budget, I will continue to do so. And that's really the standpoint we want families to be able to take.
The book is Financial Planning Made Personal. It's funny, not made easy, made personal. I like that. What did you do today that brought you joy? Available where, Larry?
Yeah, the book will be available everywhere. It's available today. So go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you normally read your books, and you should be able to find it there.
Awesome. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Mitla Money Mindset Show. What's coming up, man, that maybe is a surprise that you haven't told anybody about? Give us like the exclusive Mitla Money Mindset thing that's on the horizon.
Yeah, we have a lot of good shows. So the month of May, we dedicate to mental health awareness. So all 5 shows for the month of May will be dedicated to that. We have different guests from different walks of life that talk about mental health. And I think probably the most meaningful episode for me was the episode that'll be released on Wednesday, May 31st. My wife and I did that show together, and we talked about our involvement in the mental health space, losing her brother Keith in 2004, and all of the work and how we've raised awareness through the Keith Milano Memorial Fund. So that is something that we're looking forward to releasing.
That's fabulous. That's fantastic. We will link to the Mitla Money Mindset Show and the book on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. Larry, great talking to you again. Thank you so much for helping our stackers figure out a little bit about or at least think about a little bit what brings them joy.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.